Good suggestion. She asked. Good evening and welcome to the budget workshop for May 23rd, 2019. Everyone should have a copy of the budget now in front of them. Rather than go through the whole thing line item by line item, I think it's best that we basically go to where there's differences and go through that and see where we can go from there with getting a budget together for next week's meeting. So open the floor up to anyone who wants to start discussion.
I can get the first part started. On the senior center, there's a proposal to hire a full-time person, but the cost analysis shows that we can have 2 or 3 part-time people that would be able to work for 88 hours for the same price as one full-time person with the benefits. And so rather than having one 40-hour person, we would be able to have 88 hours worth of coverage, and I was just wondering if we could consider that.
Well, my concern, I'll tell you, the reason why I put that in there was as far as reliability. With part-time people, there's usually some turnover there, excuse me, and if we have a full-time person, there's someone to back up. There's a lot of paperwork with GNRC. In fact, I was just signing some a few minutes ago. There's a lot of paperwork to keep up on as well as the meetings, and so that's why I went that route. Is I'm concerned I won't, try to get somebody in there who's reliable, who can basically make sure that that's done if there's ever a drop or there's vacation time, sick time, whatever. We want to make sure that that's short up, because I think that's roughly 26,000, Phyllis, that we get from GNRC?
Right at that.
Okay. And that would be detrimental to the senior center to lose that.
I understand. So it's my understanding that we have some regular volunteers that volunteer that on a pretty, normal basis.
I know that was discussed, and I think the mentioned by Alderman Church was that they even keep a list of people. Whenever I spoke with Melissa Cooper, they don't have a list. They don't have a regular set of people down there who consistently volunteer.
Is there someone in mind for that position?
We're just going to open it up. It's not even posted. I've had Cheryl hold off on posting the part-time position because, of course, if we move forward with this, we'll eliminate that part-time position that's open right now and just have that full-time position and a part-time position.
Oh, I didn't realize that part-time position was open.
I don't think we budgeted it that way. I think we budgeted to keep the part-time and add a full-time, so I need to make correction.
You just have one part-time, one full-time. You wouldn't have, basically, you wouldn't be adding another person. You wouldn't be adding a third person.
Oh, I see what you're saying. We're not going to.
It's not additional head count. It's not going to be one full-time and 2 part-time. Mm-hmm. It'll be 1 part-time and 1 for actually working it, besides the coordinator position.
So in total, we'll have the coordinator, 1 part-time and 1 full-time.
Yes.
Okay.
But you don't think that there's an incentive? If we get 3 part-times, the incentive as far as volunteers would be a little bit more motivated?
Well, if we're looking at just having the bodies down there, and that would be the way to go, but we're also thinking, the way I'm thinking is backup for the grant. That was something even discussed last year, was that there's concerns with all of the paperwork with that grant program with GNRC.
Who's doing it now?
Right now, Melissa Cooper is doing it. Before that, it was Cassidy. And it's a lot of paperwork to keep up on, as well as your regular GNRC meetings, which Melissa goes to, but it's mainly the paperwork and to make sure that there's no drops.
What's your direction on opening because my concern is we're hiring full-time people for something that's not open. It's a part-time deal. So where we're going to go from there with that?
Well, I'm not looking at having it open 5 days a week, but there is work that can be done, whether it's the paperwork with the GNRC. There's a ton of cleaning to do down there with just the in and out of everyone.
Yeah, I don't dispute that there might be enough work to be done. I think that it's a little premature for us to assume that there would not be any reliable candidates to apply if we did have 3 part-time positions rather than 1 full-time and 1 part-time, in addition to the coordinator. So,
And especially with the number, the big number difference, there would be something that would look, I mean, a budget amendment would be in order, much more in order than a lot of the other ones that we've done over the years, as far as looking at the proper use of the monies that are going into this venture.
What do you mean by, as far as a budget amendment?
I said that if we get, if you, later on, if we get into a situation where we get the 3 part-times and that's not working, wouldn't we be able to do a budget amendment to go ahead and post for a full-time?
We'd have to do a budget amendment as well as, of course, through HR, either eliminate
Right.
those positions and then reopen it.
Right, right. I mean, but I'm just saying, at this juncture, we're not even entertaining it, which I think the numbers would be better as far as being able to assist down there in the center.
Well, I'll weigh in a little bit here, and Mr. McGowan, now that he has been interim Park and Rec, he's down there a lot too. The center is growing with people. I think we got 3 applicants just today, and Melissa is not only being the coordinator, and thank God that Miss Donna's been helping her because she stays overwhelmed and covered up as a coordinator. She's even coming in on Fridays and doing her grocery shopping and doing all that stuff because there's certain things that the other people are not. As far as volunteers, like Mayor Cole said, there are no volunteers that are there on a regular basis as far as to help run the center. I know that Scott comes in, he tries to vacuum as much as he can, and we've got a few other people, but we have got to get Melissa out of there, and we've got to get someone put in there that not only can help operate the center, but also help with the seniors. We had a lady fall today, and 911 was called. I don't know if Chris knows about that or not, but it's things like that that you can't just go. We have had some people ask about, my daughter wants to help. Okay, I got no problem with anybody wanting to volunteer their time, but you got to understand that you don't just want anybody coming in there to volunteer. If it was your grandmother or mom or something and something happened, you would want somebody that knows a little bit.
I understand that, but we're going to go through a proper venting procedures if we have part-time people. You would have to, HR would still have to vent them as a employee of the city.
The part-time
We would be liable.
part-time people at a senior citizen center is not like a part-time worker at McDonald's, and even with HR, or Phyllis or Bruce, whoever's going to do the hiring process, once they're put under a load, once they're put in a particular situation, they have to know how to handle it, not only because of training, which they don't really have a lot of time to do, but also just because it's an old person and they don't need to be, they need to handle certain things. If we can get another full-time person, Melissa can step away from what she's doing, and like he said, this GNRC thing, I've learned a little bit about it. Man, that is a lot of work. David will tell you. GNRC is point on
Yeah,
every
I've done
day,
it.
and
I
Melissa
work
don't
for the
have.
federal government, I know.
She needs to ease out of there and get into the administration part. We need a full-time person out front that's going to come in and operate things. Melissa, like the other day, I think she had to leave for a while. And we had to get somebody to fill in her spot, to make sure that everything else was run. I think this is one position that you absolutely cannot go wrong with in getting a full-time person out front, and then a part-time person that can be trained to help and do things and do all the GNRC things the way they need to be done.
But my question is, if we're gonna get a part-time person that can help, why can't we train 3 part-time people that can triple help?
To me, it's like truck driving. The turnover rate, and you just keep training, because nobody's gonna work down there part-time and keep training for the amount of money that they're gonna be paid. They're not going to enjoy that at all. You know, they're just not. Nobody, there may be some college kids that'll come in and work a little bit, but they're gonna be gone, you know. I understand your whole reasoning, but the thing about it is we got people that are qualified, wanting to fill out applications to be full-time, who's not only gonna come in and help and run things, but they're gonna be there for the duration of the time limit. They're gonna be there. They're gonna be with the city. Who knows, they may even move up in the city like everybody else or something.
Which would be an incentive for other people to come and be part-time for the city.
Well, we can discuss it to death, but the fact is, nobody that's wanting to work down there part-time and make that kind of money they're not gonna be the kind of people that we would love to be there. They're gonna be people who are looking for a particular part-time job who has no other, goal other than that. Be part-time and quit when the time gets right and move on. Then we get somebody else and train them and go through the hiring process and train them. And it's an ongoing process.
Bruce, can you tell me, Melissa worked part-time prior to her promotion to full-time. Can you tell me how many years she's worked for the city in that capacity?
I don't know right off the bat. It's been several years, but I'm not exactly sure how many.
I know she's been at the senior center the entirety of the time that I've been elected, which is 4.5 years now, maybe more.
I'm thinking it's around
At least 4 years, I would say.
I'm
So-
thinking it's around 5, if I'm guessing.
Okay, so she's an example of an employee that was part-time, that did a great job, and then later on got a full-time position. You know, then Linda has also been there the same length of time as far as I know. And also I hear that she does a really good job too. So I don't understand the logic that we can't get good part-time people. I think that we have two as an example that are still working at the center. And now Cassidy was able to do it. Cassidy was full-time. She had 2 part-time helpers. That was Melissa and Linda. When she left, you know, Melissa came and took the full-time position. Linda is still there, correct? Mm-hmm. So why is it that Cassidy was able to do the function in that capacity with 2 part-time people, and now suddenly we need a full-time person in that spot along with the part-time?
Well, there was concern even when Cassidy was there about that paperwork getting done. It was brought up with last year's budget meeting. There's concerns. Cassidy wanted to take a vacation. Usually AC or someone had to step in from another department, whether it's Miss Donna with the library, AC, at that point Julie Wilson, to fill those roles for people. And we had to hope that those drops didn't happen. And we'd get, you know, from talking with AC, we would get close on the grants. So we don't want to get close to that. We don't want to take a chance of losing that, because essentially if we lose the GNRC grant, like I said, that's a huge chunk of funding.
I understand, but we've never had 2 full-time people down there, and still yet we've always maintained the GNRC, so I don't know why suddenly it's different now. Because if we had 3 part-time people there versus the one and one full-time and 2 part-time, we get more hours of coverage, and those people could be also trained to do the GNRC.
Well, for me, I'm looking at the reliability. I know we've had 2 wonderful ones there, but traditionally with your temporary employees, your part-time employees, you see turnover quite a bit.
But you're casting people without giving them a chance.
Well, we cast everybody. I mean, whenever
But you
Chief
have
is
to,
looking
once
at-
you cast them, then you develop an opinion about the individuals, but you can't just say, this person's coming in as a part-time person, I know there aren't gonna be anything.
No, it's not saying that. It's trying to look at what the reliability is. Would you say that somebody who's working full-time, if you're looking to fulfill a full-time position, would you expect that person to be more reliable than someone who's just working part-time?
Yes, I would. I would expect someone to be reliable if they're filling any position, if they're only here for a couple of hours. I mean, I go through that on a daily basis. We have people come in, and we have part-time people, we have contract people that take care of our veterans at the hospital, just like a full-time nurse does. And we, that we think they're wonderful. And at the same time, we give them an incentive to learn more, and we hire them on when they graduate from nursing school and put them in position as nurses, because we give them that incentive. So I just don't, I don't get the logic as far as choosing one for three. I don't understand that.
I think that Mayor Cole made a good point too, and going back to Cassidy and her trying to keep up and catch up and everything, she did have good people. But also since then, the center's gotten a lot bigger. There's more people coming in. It's, every day we see new things and new things changing and more people coming in. So whether we're gonna have to do something in order to, because the center's growing. I mean, it's growing. It's, I don't know how long it's been since any of you all been down there, but I'm down there every day and I see it growing. Same way with no difference than these gentlemen over here needing somebody for their departments. It's growing. The city's growing. They need somebody. Phyllis needs somebody. Whoever. Everybody needs somebody. I think it's the center's turn. I think that they've worked for it and earned it, and I think it's just fitting that it's finally it needs to be done.
And I'm not doubting that, but one of the things that I would like to see, and I'm glad they are growing, but one of the things I would love to see is I would want to know how many residents of Laverne are in that number.
So I checked with AC on that. There are 24 regular members that are from Laverne. The remainder are not. And that's about half of the members that attend on a regular basis. So that may have grown a little bit in the last 6 months since Cassidy left. But that's the number as of 6 months ago. Now, how much it's grown to this point and how many regular Laverne people today, I don't know.
David, can you get with Melissa to pull current numbers of residents versus non-residents and have that number just emailed to the board? Yes, sir. Thank you. This way we can at least find that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had talked to AC before too about non-residents, people that don't live in Laverne, and maybe just having a small fee for them. And I'm not talking about something that's going to make it unaffordable for them, but just to help offset the cost of the center in our budget. It might be something that we could consider, and that way we could continue to grow and yet sustain it.
So you want to charge the seniors that don't live in Laverne?
I would say a small nominal fee, yes.
What would that fee be?
I don't know. I would have to run the numbers on that, but I'm thinking just a couple of dollars to offset their food and whatever activities they participate in. As they're not contributing to the funds that contribute to that, they're not paying taxes here. They're not contributing to it, and that they're reaping the benefit of it, which is great. But they're doing that at the cost of Laverne residents. So it's kind of
Any of the assistants that I've seen in Metro, they do not allow you. You can't. They just straight out tell you no. They stop you at the door. If you can't show them an ID with a water bill or a light bill with an address in Metro, they don't serve. You can't get anything. That's to include children for Christmas gifts when they go.
I know a lot of the residents that come there, the ones that don't live around, they, I guess, they just tell us that, Smyrna's terrible, Mount Juliet's terrible, and we feel so comfortable here. Even a lot of the people we got a lady that come up here today or this week from Huntsville that used to live here, spent her whole life here, but she had to move to Huntsville, but she still comes up here occasionally. And when they join, they pay $5, I think, to join or something, I'm not sure what the fee is. So, I guess there's a lot of right and wrong answers in my book. I just know that the center's growing and it's time to step it up and help them out to where they can get this GRNC, get that thing done and move on.
Yeah, and that, I agree with you 100%. And I think a full-time person could take care of that GRNC. 3 part-time people can take care of the footwork while that other is being done.
I don't think part-timers can do what those ladies do. I'm not shooting them down. I'm not trying to not give them a chance. I've just seen it, and
They can't learn.
it's tough work.
Could they learn?
I guess over time, if you wanted to do the turnover, but by the time you taught them, they'd just quit, move on, and we'd start all over again.
Well, Melissa didn't, and Linda didn't.
Well,
That's
you know,
5 years
there's
of good
exceptions.
service.
They started when it was kind of not busy, not crazy, not a lot of people. Like today at bingo time, you can't even get in there. And most of those, well, the majority of those residents are from Laverne.
And the gifts for bingo are toilet paper, hygiene products, diapers, shaving cream. I mean, these are items that these individuals would not have if it wasn't for our center. So I just want
I'm
to,
not trying to shut down the center.
no, I understand that. I just
We're
want
trying to get more
just,
people in the center.
I'm just trying to
assist the
stress
people.
that to you, you know.
I know. I mean, I do Operation Stand Down. I see exactly what people need. But, you know, I'm trying to see how can you justify a growing community and we're not going to hire more people to help the growing community because we don't trust that they're going to be reliable. I don't see that.
I think it's a matter of quality over quantity.
I think there's some really good quality part-time people.
I'm sure there is.
And I think that, you know, just like any position, when we fill it, we have to do our best to screen for quality, to make sure that we get someone that has a heart for the seniors and the ability to learn and the ability to kick in whatever contribution they need to make in order to be successful in their position. I don't think that we're going to be faced with people that do it for a couple of months and then quit. I just really don't believe that the turnover is going to be that high, and I don't think that we're going to get unreliable applicants. And we'll have more coverage, more hours of coverage, more people cross-trained to better assist the seniors. So I don't know I don't know where the research comes from that says that a part-time person is less reliable or unable to learn. But I'd like to see that article.
I think it would be best to have more elected officials down there besides campaign time, so you would see the in-depth need of what our senior citizen need.
Right. Some of us have work schedules that are not flexible. You know, for
Oh, I
instance,
understand.
for me, it's 6:30 to 3:30 on West End. So that's exactly the same hours that the center is open, or more than the same hours, and it takes an hour and a half to commute home. So it's not that I don't want to go to the senior center, it's that I can't take off a day of work to do that, when there are other things that the city requires me to do that I do need to take off work for.
And it's not that, I mean, at least from my standpoint, I still know what goes on down there in the senior citizens, and I know the needs that they have. I know the functions that they have. And, you know, I don't think that I need to be down there every day to know this. I mean, I can see it. I know it. I've heard it from other people that have worked down there. That's why I am an advocate for getting more people down there to help them run the senior citizen much more.
But you just don't want to allow them benefits,
Who?
health insurance and things. You rather have a part-time status than a full-time status with benefits and
I would take a
higher
part-time,
wage.
when I got out of the military, I took 4 part-time jobs, and I was more concerned about getting a paycheck so I could eat. And as far as my benefits, as far as insurance and all that, I worked hard enough to try to get a full-time job, which I did, and I was able to do that. But had I ran across the opinion that I'm starting here as a part-time person, I could never do anything, I'd never amount to anything, I'd probably have starved and I'd probably be living under a bridge somewhere. So I can understand the situation. We have to take care of the citizens of Laverne. We can't take care of one person or 2 people that we need to get full-time or benefits for. We have to make sure that we're running this thing properly and conservatively.
Conservatively, that's good.
Any more discussion on the senior center portion?
So
Okay.
do we feel in support of a budget that, so as of right now, we're not for the hiring of a full-time position, an additional full-time position at the senior citizen center?
I'm for hiring 3 more people
3 part-time,
to assist in the
With no
position with a
benefits.
part-time individual.
There's,
so the one
I mean,
full-time.
with a full-time, I'm sorry.
for the 88 hours that 3 part-time people will work, you'll only get 1 full-time person at 40 hours. So it really cuts our service to the seniors in half to hire a full-time person based on this assumption that a part-time person is not going to be a quality employee or reliable or capable of learning.
So, Phyllis, with 3 part-time positions, is that equivalent to 1 full-time position with benefits?
Just about,
So we're about to talking the same money.
close to it.
So being conservative, we are in the same revenue stream for that. I mean, so a part-time person, what is it, $12,000 a year, something like that?
But we're somewhere around 15
15?
to 18.
With more than twice the man hours of help for the seniors. So I think that speaks to me whenever someone fell at the senior center today, right? You have a full-time person, a part-time person, that's only 2 people. In this scenario, you would have a full-time person and 3 part-time people. That's 4 people that could assist in that matter.
Any more discussion on the senior position? Okay, well, I open it back up to any more differences with the budget.
If we can go through the nonprofits.
Sure.
I'd like to ask a question before we start on that, on the nonprofits. Phyllis, do we have you sent an email on, is it Hope, the
Hope Station.
Hope Station? Have we got that in here now?
Yes, it's
Okay.
included in there. It's not included in our budget, but it's included on that list.
Okay.
And it's close to the last page of your packet.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
So are we talking about the budget in general now or something particular?
Well, this is just, it's going through, as I said at the beginning, going through and trying to find where those differences are between what was submitted and how we get to a new budget that will pass with first reading next week and second reading at a special meeting.
Well, let's talk about Laverne boxing. And there's several on here that I want to talk about, but we'll just start at this one right here.
Hey, I'm trying to find it. Where is?
Close to the last
Almost
page.
second to last or
Almost the last one.
third.
Third page from the back.
Thank you.
Laverne boxing, 15-16, it was $5,000, 16-17, $5,000. Last year, we increased it to $10,000. I was fully on board with that. Their expenses had gone up. I reviewed the budget, and I agreed with that change. But now we're wanting $15,000. Whenever I reviewed their budget this year, I learned that the full amount of their lease is a little less than $15,000. So basically, this is Laverne paying an extra $5,000 when they've already got their price doubled, and that completely covers the entirety of their lease. In a lean budget year, I mean, there's several nonprofits that kind of fit in that same category. I'm just choosing one so we can have specifics, but there's several nonprofits that we're giving more money to this year in a budget where we had less money to appropriate to different departments. And so I just wondered what the logic was on that in general.
Well, overall, as a total, you'll see we're actually doing less with the nonprofits at least proposed for this year compared to the last prior 2 years as a whole. This year, the proposed was $166,000. Prior to that was $191 and $180. So, and before that, it was 16, it was 159,000. So, it's been steadily going up each year. This would be the first year that total amount goes down. But speaking to Laverne Boxing, for me personally, I've been talking with them for several years now, and even last year, whenever they had their budget amount, that was the amount that was barely making it through. They were barely surviving off of. And they've got an increase again with their rent. So with the lease with the property owner, for a while, they actually thought they were going to lose the whole building. And this is a worthwhile after-school program. I think everyone agrees on that, for keeping kids off the street and getting out of trouble, whether it's through their homework assistance, through activities in the community, boxing, the discipline with that, Bible studies, all those different things and more I feel like it's helping our children across the board.
I can totally understand that. That's why I had my son in karate after school. But that was $125 a week that I paid, and Laverne Boxing does not charge for their services, which is really nice of them. But I submit that some of those parents could maybe pay something. I certainly did. It wasn't easy for me. I made the sacrifice to do that so that my son could be in an after-school program that was beneficial to him, kept him out of trouble, and gave him an outlet for his frustrations the same way this Laverne Boxing would. And I do think they're a fantastic cause. I just don't want to see Laverne bearing the entire load of all of their expenses, when I feel like either with parent contributions or more fundraisers, they could come up with that money themselves.
Hey, Chief, can you help with this 15,000? Is any of that is through, I guess, the police organization,
The FOP.
the FOP?
Conrad, how much is FOP? Boxing.
I think as they just discussed, it was 10,000 last year and they're asking 15 this year for.
How much is FOP funding Laverne Boxing? You remember?
I don't have that information, but I can call Sully real quick to get that information.
Tony or Eric one, I don't get to go to most of the FOP meetings. I'm a paying member and a supporting member, but I don't get to go to very many meetings at all. But we'll find out.
Right.
Over Zelensky or Eric one.
And it, like I said, I think all of these nonprofits are valid, good causes. I mean, I agree that all of them are contributing to Laverne. My concern is that a lot of them have requested significant increases and have been granted not granted, but it was submitted in the previous budget that we declined, that they would receive those funds, and I just wanted to discuss some of those. I do see a $30,000 reduction for Laverne Wolverines band booster because their uniforms are purchased. So,
Well, not a reduction. That's just they've never come forward and asked, to my knowledge. I know the city, maybe it was 04, 05, received some money from the city from reading through one of the meetings, but they've requested $36,000, and they were asking for any assistance.
FOP's been giving them 5 to 7 a year.
5,000 to 7,000? Thank you. So the 5,000 to 7,000 is an additional operations. They pay their light bill, I assume water bill, things like that.
right.
They have to fix that old building up too on their own, because apparently,
Liability
the
insurance.
gentleman doesn't really want to put any more money into it. There's just nowhere for them to go. They've looked and looked, there's not enough.
So 5 to 7, that's, $21,000, $22,000 a year of income going in there. They have some fights, they generate some revenue. But they take these kids, I mean, they take them all over the southeast to, you know, show off their skills, not to mention the homework assistants and things like that. It's a program that's been needed in Laverne for a long time. And the individuals that are running the program, they don't receive any pay. Everyone there is volunteers. So, just want to share that.
That's a good point. They're reliable.
Yeah.
Like part-time people.
You were saying, Vice Mayor, about the Laverne Wolverines band boosters with the uniforms.
Yeah, and you know, I was in the choir at Laverne, so this is not personal against them, but it's not just the band. There's the choir, then there's the swim team, and then there's the golf team, and then there's the track team, and there's football, basketball, baseball. I think there's a very slippery slope here to put them on there related to the school, because there's a lot of different nonprofit groups that are at Laverne High School. I'm just saying it's a slippery slope.
Can you explain that? So,
Did they ask for money?
They asked for 36,000.
No, all those other groups?
Oh, no.
No, but the band didn't ask for any money prior to this either. And once the band gets approved for money, I'm sure that we'll be on their Christmas list.
Now, the only pushback on that is the city has given the band money in the past, and like I said, I want to say that was either '04 or '05, maybe '06 from just reading through, but it's not come back up since then that I know of. Bruce, do you know of any other time that they've come back?
Yeah, I only remember the one time, and I don't remember what year it was, but it was, I'm wanting to say it was around the $5,000 range at that point.
what year was that?
I don't remember what year it was. It is probably about the time frame Mayor Coles mentioned, but that's the only time that I know of that we've specifically given the band boosters money.
And it wasn't part of the regular budget year discussions. It was outside of that where they came to the board, and it was in the midst of just one of the regular meetings
Right.
that it was
A
discussed.
budget
and passed.
amendment, basically.
Yes. Any others?
One of the things that as far as the budget for nonprofits in general, one of the things that I would like to see is a little bit more, like this Hope Station. They sent a complete expenditure report on what they're using the monies for, what other monies were coming in. I think that's something that we need to request of everyone. Mutlow did it. They did they did a very detailed expenditure report on theirs, but I think that's something that we need to, that should be required along with their applications.
We can definitely have that changed. If it's not already being
What
done.
we require in the past is a copy of their 501c3, a copy of their most recent financial statement, which should include revenues and expenses, and then their request letter. So we pretty much have their expenses. It may not be broken out in a lot of detail on some of them, but we do have the backup for their request.
There's another one here, we should discuss the rescue squad that's been servicing Laverne for 50 years, and because of a rumor of two people who are both now deceased having a difficult conversation some 16 years ago, the conversation is now that we don't need them, we don't call them, we haven't called them in some time, but that resource has always been available to us, and our lack of willingness to call them in a time where we say that our emergency services departments are needing assistance or needing more staff is surprising to me. So I'd like to open that up for conversation too.
Sure, I can tell you, at least my decision not to have any funds in them wasn't based on any of that conversation with with rumor of what was said years ago to different people who, quite frankly, aren't here anymore. My decision was based on looking at services to the city, qualifications and certifications, and what role they could have with the city. Whenever we look at that, we look at emergencies and opportunities that they could assist. So when I had some discussions as far as their certifications, where they're at, as far as also looking at their number of personnel, it's extremely difficult to find a role. And even whenever Mr. Blair was here, I didn't hear a definitive role from him as far as for the rescue squad. And I mean, for any group that has a role here in the city, I mean, I would love assistance with all the various things. I mean, we've got so much work to do for the city that it's overwhelming at times. I think everyone agrees on that. And it's finding that role. And I didn't hear one articulated out here in the city. I understand that they have a past, and I mean, that's wonderful what they've done for the city, and we have to look at what they're doing going forward.
What have they been asked to do?
Well, what have they offered to do at the same time? I didn't hear anything as far as an actual role that they offer the city. When you're looking at certifications, I mean, I know we've heard about land searches. We heard about diving. We've heard several different things, but we're looking at what they're offering the city as far as what their services are. Personally, I didn't hear anything that, and then when looking at their certifications and discussing with our staff, I didn't see that role.
Is it possible to get the department heads involved with this?
Yes, yeah.
Chief,
I mean, you can ask questions.
Chief Clark, at this time, is the Laverne Rescue Squad needed in our city?
At this point in time, we have not called upon them.
Do we have the
There-
capabilities to run
The-
extrication?
The qualifications, I will tell you, as a fire chief, in the event that we need manpower, could be a possibility. But I'm not going to put somebody in an environment that they're not trained in. Does that make sense? In some of these areas, they are not trained in. I'll give you an example. Swiftwater Rescue. That's the reason we upped our response, because of the lack of training in those areas. So what you've seen is an increase in our capability due to the fact there was a lack of capability from the beginning.
And that's why the city made that investment
Correct.
internal.
Correct. I'll be honest with you, at this point, I probably wouldn't call for the rescue squad just due to the delay in response. As Mr. Blair said, it would take approximately an hour. That's sometimes difficult, so a lot of times we would utilize our mutual aid partners that does have a quicker response. They have served a valuable response over the years. However, presently, that's difficult. We have spoke about land searches. I brought that topic up. It has not been grasped. There's some ideas out there that we've thrown out there that briefly spoke. There wasn't a deep conversation. It wasn't taken. I'll just be honest with you. I spoke with Alderman Brown about that same issue. I spoke about it. There hasn't been anything moved forward. Fire department's going to do it. I'll be sending guys to managing search operations and grid searches and things like that. Give them an opportunity to take it. If nobody takes it, I assume that responsibility and we will move forward.
Thank you.
So the conversation has not continued
No,
on
ma'am.
your part or his?
I've ran a volunteer service for a long time. And in those volunteers, you find work. If you want it, you go get it, and you make something out of it. I ran a volunteer fire department for a long time, and that's what we did. Not to speak bad about these folks. They are fine, fine folks. If you want it bad enough, you'll go get it. We have not restricted them by no means, in anything. We would love to help. We haven't received a request for help. I don't know what else to tell you, but that I will tell you that if there is an emergency, we will call our mutual aid partners due to the fact of response time and training. Let's give you an example as a possible drowning right here at Percy Priest Lake. I will be calling the county for their divers.
You just called them then?
I think that's an Amber Alert.
Amber Alert out of Chattanooga.
It's good response time there, Chief.
So you told me a story, Chief Clark, that you did in fact try to get the rescue squad one time on water or something, and you or one of your guys had to end up operating the boat or something because they had nobody that was qualified?
No, there was some difficulty with a wrecked vessel that was on Hong Kong Island out here above Fool's Knob Recreation. There was a little difficulty and some boating issues there. I asked them if they would like for me to go ahead and do that, and I took over and went and got them. I think that has to do with new to that boating area. I boat all the time, as you know. I took the lead and addressed the issue, and we removed those people safely off of that brand new Malibu boat that's busted up on Hong Kong Island.
Nighttime navigation.
During that time, it was getting somewhat twilight. Eventually, once the operation ended, it was at dark. I think that it's up to you to vote what to do or what not to do. I will tell you as a fire chief, I'm not going to put anybody in an environment that they're not trained for, period.
Which I think goes back to what Mayor Cole was talking about, was absolutely they did good things in the past.
Absolutely.
But benefiting your all's department, and I'm assuming police helping them at times for some reason, the quality has gone way down. And as you said, if you want something, you've got to go get it.
Can I speak on their behalf to a certain extent?
Absolutely.
As well? Today's volunteerism is not like it used to be. Being involved with volunteer fire departments across the county for many years, right before our recession hit, you started to see a major decline in volunteer participation. Everybody's trying to get that dollar. Everybody in the emergency field, we have NFPA, we have OSHA, we have all these guidelines that we have to follow. And the reason we did that was because there was a mistake and somebody lost their life. And now they've become requirements. And it's very difficult for volunteers to pick up those hours of training and those certifications when they have to fend for their families. It has become more demanding. So speaking on their behalf, it's very difficult to keep up those hours, maintain them, respond at 24/7. To give you an example, it takes a rescue squad of approximately 100 and something personnel that can run a service 24/7, 365. You see a lot of that up north. It's difficult for our area, and they're limited up there as well, just due to time, training, requirements, proficiency, all those kind of things. So I do want to speak on their behalf. Society is so busy now that it's hard to rely on those volunteers that have to mandate those certain training requirements in those certain response criteria, if that makes sense. So I need people to understand that it is very difficult.
So is it, Phyllis, this may be a question for you. When you're dealing with nonprofits, is it, so the number went down to 166,000. Would it be bad for us to say we can trim a little bit more, you know, another 3% across the board?
I mean, yeah, we have some new nonprofits that are on there that we've never participated in, that, you know, we, you know, maybe not bring them in at such a large amount that they've requested, or make some kind of reductions to some of the larger ones. It's just what the board wants to do.
Then this comes out of that 800,000. Would this come out of that 800,000 pool that is in need for the department heads?
Well, Phyllis had said at the budget workshops that she had budgeted, I want to say it was 175,000, 74,000?
The far right-hand column is in the budget, currently in the budget. If we make any changes, that's going to come out of whatever the number was. We either have to dip into reserves or reduce something else to cover it somewhere else.
I'm not talking to add, I'm talking to subtract.
Oh, to subtract.
Yeah, to subtract. I mean, I want to reduce. I think we can cut, I'm just looking at this, we can go down this and cut 3% just for simple math, because of some of the needs that the street department is needing that the money's not there for. Can this money be used for those areas?
Yeah, technically it can be. That's the way the board wants to work it. It's kind of hard to reduce some of these by a percentage because they're kind of a contract. You know, like the Chamber of Commerce, you know, they've requested X number of dollars. I don't know, you know, how they would feel about a percentage reduction. You know, the Rutherford County.
Yeah, I've actually looked into that. So, no, it's just cut and dry, 3%. If we took 3% off of each item all the way down, and the county's asking for 10,000, well, they don't get 10,000, they get 900, and you know, whatever the difference is. They're not going to say, well, if you can't give us the 10,000, don't send us anything. Along with the chamber, also, I'm just looking at this other part and not knowing how the budget works.
They may cut their services to us if we cut their donation.
Yeah, they may. Or they may give us more service to make sure they get their full amount next year. I'm just trying to see where the $800,000 is what we have, and we had $2 million, roughly $2 million in requests internal with the departments. And just learning this, I didn't know if we could use some of this money towards, you know, an item that the street department needs, or a full-time employee, you know.
Overall, we have included about $1.4 million in operating and capital. We had 800 to work with, so we're currently taking 648,000 out of reserves.
Which is primarily the e-citation and the police cars, I think 7?
Yeah.
7 police cars, which the reason why with those, as far as those 2 items coming out of reserves, was specifically these are one-time purchases. These aren't going to be reoccurring funds. Like if we have an employee coming with, as far as through that's going to keep hitting every single year until either we see an increase in revenue.
Is that normal to do in a budget, to use $600,000 in reserve?
Yeah, I mean, we don't like to use reserves, but, you know, typically what we do is, you know, if you'll notice I'm not sure if it's listed out in this budget. In last year's budget, we estimated that we were going to take $953,000 out of reserves, and we wound up actually putting back about $2.9 million. So sometimes our sales tax comes in more. Sometimes, you know, we have a different stream of revenue that comes in and offsets it, or something we didn't expect that we were gonna get, or
A lot of that depends on the economy as well.
Well, the other thing I just want to mention is that if we did take a 3% reduction on this 166,000 that's proposed for nonprofits, that's only $5,008, so that
Yeah.
probably wouldn't offset a full-time person
No, it wouldn't
Salary.
offset a full-time person, I understand that.
or even a part-time person salary. But that does kind of bring me to a point too. I know codes, the engineering department have needed a full-time person for some number of years, and they haven't got one in this existing budget either, and that was one of my concerns.
The street department, Garland, how long has it been since you had an extra body? 2 years ago. 2 years?
Thought with the engineering planning, they were asking to convert one person over, which was budgeted in here as well. Let me go over and find it.
I take that back, it was last year that we got the extra person. I had put in my budget for 1, 2 years out.
Where is it? Here it is. It's the reclassification vacant building inspector to plans examiner / building inspector.
Will that help some of the backlog that's happening for the fire department as well, for the fire inspector? Is there any other, I didn't see a whole lot in the budget for the fire department this year either, as far as staffing. I did see 1 K-9 for the police department. Is there any additional proposed staffing for the fire?
Not currently with as far as what we have. I know one discussion that we've been having, this has probably been going on, 2 years now, 2.5, about a fire administration, Fire Station 1 building. And we're looking into that, but we're still a good ways off. I know there's some discussion on the layout and the design of it, and the land right there where the current admin is.
And we are getting closer, but if things started to move forward today, you're still looking at next year's budget. Those are facts. I'll just be honest with you, I have a goal of hopefully operating out of a brand-new station by next December. So, I'll be coming back to you as things start to develop on plans and confirming those kind of things. I will be coming back to concerning a new fire station.
Chief, would it make more sense to focus on a station out where the growth is on Lake Road in that area before we added the additional cost for the admin building?
I don't think so. I believe that we're currently on point, and I'll give you a reason why. Is that right now we cannot move out of Station 1. We have no parking. Our bathrooms conditions. We have 1 bathroom at shift change. We got 14 people trying to get in it. I believe that as far as functionality, training, all these other kind of things, components that puts our fire department together, they're essential. I will tell you, as you see in the budget, that Station 4 is listed in a couple of years in your budget. As that growth, I will be honest with you, I'd rather watch the growth start to develop out on near Lake Road a little more before we started another station. We've been, talking about the growth that's going to go out on Waldron Road. And when that happens, that's when we probably need to strike. I've seen fire departments where we've sat out in cow pastures for 5 or 6 years promising development, and the next thing you know, there was no development. And so they mothballed that fire station for 5 to 7 years, waiting on that growth. Here recently, Murfreesboro saw that impact. So as that growth, we're going to be on it. We're going to be monitoring it. And as soon as our response times reflect that we've got a problem there, I feel that it would be time to strike.
And I'm a little surprised with this budget as well, because I know one thing that we've done in the previous 4 years is each year try to give fire and police some more staff. I know you guys are understaffed, and I'm disappointed in this budget that it looks like public safety was talked a lot about, but it doesn't look like it's reflected in the budget for this year. And I'm a little disappointed in that, because I think that, you know, we were working towards getting caught up and not further behind.
Chief Walker.
There were a couple of things that I wanted to clarify that were brought up and mentioned. One of them is K-9. The K-9 in and of itself is requested because Mike will be 8 in September. He and I share a name and a birthday. And he's slowing down a little bit. It will take at least a year to ensure that a new K-9 who is trained, along with a new handler who will have to be trained, are working together and they're moving smoothly, so that we could have one available at various times of the days and different days a week, more than just someone to replace. However, it is some protection against needing to replace and not having. The cost of the K-9, the cost of the training, the cost of the equipment. The training includes the handlers' training and expenditures while they're in Louisiana, where we go to US K-9 for that training. The vehicle and those kinds of equipment things can come, since it's primarily used for narcotics. That's the primary function of them, can come from federal asset forfeiture dollars, or our regular drug fund dollars. So that cost in and of itself would be covered. The only problem is the cost of a handler will need to come from the general fund up front, simply because we can't pay for the person to do that, because they do more than just the narcotic stuff. That would require another person, either that or take somebody off patrol and put them in that position to move over to a crime suppression, because you can't depend on a K-9 officer to be on patrol answering calls, working a zone, just because of the nature of that beast. So that cost could come from somewhere else that wouldn't be general fund money. One other thing was mentioned, and that's the e-citation. E-citation also, under state law, and we discussed it up front, you can pass an ordinance that adds a $5 technology fee that's good for a 5-year period. Down the road could be renewed if need be, but at least for a 5-year period, that you collect $5 on each citation, where the person pays it up front or is found guilty at that point in time as a part of the cost. Anytime those costs are paid, there'd be another $5 that pays for the software and hardware that it takes. And you collect that over a 5-year period, and you recoup those general fund dollars that you upfront do through that fee. And the people who are requiring you to need it and use it are the ones that are paying for it. Not necessarily just our citizens, but anybody that's here and issued a citation. I just wanted to clarify those two things.
Okay.
And there's a lot in this budget on planning with design, which is something that I've always heard, as far as if you don't have a plan, everything is luck. So you're seeing a lot of planning in here. Our Director of Engineering, Adam Leach, and I have been talking about master planning and where the city is currently with some of the plans that had been laid out over the past and where some of the shortfalls are. So that's why you see so many master plans like drainage master plans, planning for Parks and Rec, the water master plan. You're seeing a lot of that so that we can get to that point. The sewer master plan, getting that updated so that we can have a plan so that years down the road, there's at least a blueprint going forward. They don't have to stick right to it, but at least they have that. And that, I mean, that even ties in with our, as far as looking at our zoning, our codes for building and impact fees, getting those up to date. So there's a lot of planning in here and trying to get to where we need to be. I mean, I would love for there to be more as far as public safety, but again, as we've all mentioned at some point tonight, we're under a very tight budget. And there's different things that are in the works, such as the Fire Station 1 possibility. There's different things. Chief and I have talked about that $5 recoup before, where that can pay for that technology. And then other pieces like the Thor submission service. I mean, that's absolutely needed with our system to try to get that up to TBI, right, Chief?
That's actually sending our information to the Fusion Center, which is at TBI, but it's segregated. That's local, state, and federal officers who are there, and intel analysts, et cetera, who are there, sharing that database that we can search for things that we can't when we send Tiber's data.
Thank you, sir.
So is it okay to talk about parks now?
Well, let me ask one question since we're kind of been hitting a little bit on police and fire. I know Chief was mentioning the drug fund. Phyllis, if we were looking at $104,000, which is roughly the cost of the K-9 vehicle and the training, because personnel couldn't be in there, correct, Chief?
The personnel couldn't. We canned the equipment and the cost of the K-9 and the training. We can't pay for upkeep like dog food, et cetera, out of it.
Right, no regular maintenance.
Right. But we can the kennel up front and those kinds of things we have to have. The vest for the K-9, et cetera, and the vehicle.
Phyllis, do we have the funds in the drug fund currently to cover $104,000?
believe so. Let's see.
I don't believe we do in our other drug fund, our state level drug fund and federal asset forfeiture dollars we would, but we have to have approval from
We would not.
the feds.
We would not, I would not feel comfortable using the drug fund. There's only
Okay.
about $70-something thousand in there,
That's the state drug fund account.
regular drug fund.
And we're still waiting on that large deposit.
The large one, but in federal asset forfeiture, we've got about 200.
It's around 300,
How much?
around 300, probably better than 300.
I was shy, sorry. But we could use those. We have to request approval before we spend them. So if it's budgeted, it's gonna have to be budgeted, and then, budget amendment to offset it, once we gain approval from federal asset forfeiture.
How long does it take to get approval for that?
Oh, Lord have mercy, how long did it take us to get that dadgum truck?
It'd take at least 2 to 3 months.
Probably, at least. The Silverado we talked about way back when, we were buying $5,000. We just got it, 2 weeks ago? Finally. It was in our hand, and we got a title, et cetera, or some kind of something the federal government gave us, like a bill of sale, sort of, kind of.
So could we get the ball rolling on at least the request portion and see where that lands us to see if we can do later on a budget amendment later in the year? Would that be acceptable?
We'll have to find out if we can request it before it's approved to do it or not, wouldn't we?
I think we have to request it and get approval before we can put it in the budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know we use a lot, I know in the past we've used the federal funds on vehicles in the past, haven't we?
No, that's been drug fund and
Regular
police
state.
impact,
Okay.
and that's not that much, police impact.
But either way, it sounds like there's a light at the end of the tunnel for the money. It's gonna be here eventually.
Who knows?
Yeah, well,
We've been waiting, what, almost 3
I
years
remember
now?
asking you about it a while back. And you
Yeah.
was-
So currently, Chief, how much manpower are you in need of? Are we sufficient right now with? with our-
We're in need of filling our vacancies.
That's already in the budget.
As of today, as of this fiscal year, we had 88 total positions. 68 of them are sworn and 20 non-sworn. Excuse me. But as of today, we have 11 total vacancies, and there are 7 non-sworn vacancies, including my executive assistant, and 4 sworn vacancies. We lost a young man today that's going to private industry, Thomas Gray, that's been here, 3 years? A little over, almost 4, I guess. And then, of course, we lost Megan Whitesell, little Megan that's crime scene evidence tech. We lost her. Last week was her last day. She went to the medical examiner's office as an investigator and walked out our door into theirs for a little more than $10,000 a year, so you can't blame her. And Thomas, either he's going to private industry, making more. And the problem we've got, we discussed this morning at our chief's breakfast. Chiefs and sheriff in Rutherford County get together every couple of months, and we bounce back and forth between Smyrna and Murfreesboro Cracker Barrels. And we were there this morning, and we all have the same issues. Mike Bowen is about 1.5 sworn officers per 1,000 population. Right now, we're about 1.61, I think it is, if we use the estimated 41,000.
So you have 14 open positions currently in the budget.
No, we have 11 open positions total. 7 of those are non-sworn, and 4 of them are sworn.
I'm a little surprised, and maybe this is just a side note, but I'm a little surprised since Nashville has some turnover going on with their police department with some of the new administration policies that they've had, and also Memphis going through the same thing just a couple years ago. I'm really surprised we're not getting more applicants than we can handle,
Well, part of the problem you've got there is a lot of the people that have left MNPD have not left willingly. Now, there are some who are getting out of the profession because of today's climate concerning our profession, and they're also younger officers. There aren't many of the older ones leaving unless they're retiring. The younger ones are the ones that are looking for greener pastures. I won't get into that as to the reason why, but they look at jobs differently than most of us do. They look at longevity differently than we do, and they're very inclined to hopping around and having a short attention span. But then on the other hand, there are some things inherently about what we do that people get there and they say, didn't realize that. And there's different mindset today than it was. There are not many Metro officers leaving and going to other surrounding agencies. There's a handful that are going, but not by droves, not like you would get from media comments. I'll put it that way.
I'm not surprised.
A lot of them are just going and doing other things.
Do you have anybody in the academy?
We have 2 in the academy. They'll graduate June 20. Don't hold me to it. I think it's the last Thursday in June. Thursday or Friday.
Is that
they're
in
gonna graduate.
these 11?
Pardon me?
Is that in the 11? Is that in the 11?
That's in the total sworn we have.
Okay.
They're included there. Any filled position is included in that
would be in
group.
that 68.
There are 68 sworn positions. You take 4 off, that's 64 of them that are filled. That includes everybody that's sworn.
Gotcha. What about you, Chief Clark? Manpower-wise?
As you saw on our budget, what we were attempting to do was place one truck or apparatus in service. That was what those 6 were going to give you that we applied. We put out a plan of that we were trying to add 6 till we hit that 18 per shift, or thereof. So I will tell you that was what that was for, was to add to bring ESU, the hazmat, that we've made the hazmat unit, make that in service. It will respond to medical calls along with the fire service aspect of it and rescues, and put that in service. What we look at as far as open positions currently, we have 2 firefighters positions. One was due to a promotion recently with our life safety officer, and another one was due to a termination. Those are the 2 open positions we currently have. They will be filled June the 27th.
Total head count?
Total head count, 50. 3 of us, myself, the executive assistant, fire marshal. You can subtract that from them.
And that puts, 12 on each shift?
We put 16 per shift. Now take in consideration we have vacation, training, Kelly Day.
So
Kelly
on
Day
average-
kills us.
On an average, it's 12, yeah, with the Kelly Day and vacation.
That number
Could be 7.
after the EMT class, we increased that number by 1 to 13. So there's 3 people that can be off at any given time. Kelly days kill us. I hate Kelly because we have to send them off. If not, we pay them overtime.
Right.
But training is a huge aspect in our business. We are progressing left and right. And I'm very proud of those guys that have jumped in there and moved forward. And I spoke to Alderman No, and he's like, man, you train all the time. So
You got any drug money coming up?
Let me tell you,
we need to talk about that.
let me tell you one of the things going on in our county, and I think I said something about it before, but Conrad's been very involved. Chris has too. We have EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, and law enforcement officers training together in our county. One of the very few anywhere doing active killer training, ATRIC training. And it'll keep going until September, October. Is that correct? But somebody goes a day this week and a day next week, and you've got all of them there working, training together. I would submit to you, you ought to be pretty dadgum proud
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
that the emergency services agencies in Rutherford County are working together. I've never seen it like this in my time here. I've never seen it in my professional career, to be honest.
Chief, we helped a fire out in the county earlier in the week, didn't we?
We did. We've helped with some
Mutual aid.
investigation in Rutherford County. We had a house fire, apartment fire. So we formed a task force. We work together. When we have need help, they come up here. So that relationship as well. Being part of this active group on that active threat, I would be glad to send you schedules of when these classes will occur, and then I invite you as our board and alderman. I would love to see you attend, at least see what we're doing and how we're doing it, and how all the agencies are working together to make one response. It's pretty amazing.
And I'm older than all of you. If I'm gonna go do it, you all have to go through it too. We'll give you some munitions. Fair enough, isn't it, Conrad?
That might be fun.
Oh,
We'll make you the bad guy.
we want you to know what we're doing, and I would love for y'all to come see what's going on, because it's awesome.
Absolutely. Okay. What else?
So pretty much you gave up the manpower for the truck, right? To get that truck in service.
That's correct.
Yeah. I mean, just so we understand it.
And here's the thing, and is it needed? Absolutely. 150% is needed. Our call volume deals with, we don't have depth. Right now, currently, you put us 4 calls into it, and we're done. Our depth is what we're lacking. We have great personnel, and they're very talented. It's just not enough of them. And so that's what that 6 we're there for. We got to get some depth.
After seeing that training the other night with the Explorers, I think you can put them on a truck and send them on.
I love them. They're awesome.
It's just a liability.
Just a little underage.
Just a little bit.
I have a question for Phyllis. This should be an easy one. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know in our last budget meeting, the mayor requested that the board submit to you a list of things that we'd like to see happen in this budget year. How many receipts did you get from our board?
Just one.
That was a request, right? Just, if
The
we wanted
request
to,
for-
we could send it to her.
Well, it was as far as to help form this budget, what your items are that you're wanting for me to review.
So on the Parks and Rec, did we consolidate the 2 departments, maintenance and parks?
Yes, that's what we discussed at planning and budget, was to reintegrate those 2 departments back together.
And where are we at with the, I see in the budget here, it's got the director position. How are we doing that?
So my thoughts are that you eliminate both the manager of maintenance position and the director of Parks and Rec. You post a new position for director of Parks and Rec and maintenance, and you open that up for people to apply.
What about supervisors for each individual branch of that?
Well, I've spoken about how it would be great to, at least in my thoughts, to run it similar to how water billing is. So they have 2 supervisors who basically supervise those 2 departments. We'd want to work with whoever's the new director to whether they think they can do that or whether they can do 2 supervisors. Personally, I'd like to see it as 2 supervisors, and there's been some discussion how much money would be left from merging those 2 positions where you're eliminating the manager and the director position and creating one new position. We don't know those exact numbers because we've just got to get to that point yet. And we've got to talk to whoever's going to be in charge to see how that department's going to be set up,
So would that be a budget amendment then?
possibly if needed.
And on this paper, it's showing that the senior citizens still have the 2 part-time positions.
That's something we were talking about before you got here was because we started off with the Senior Citizen Center, was, at least my thought was, beyond the coordinator position, you've got 1 full-time position and 1 part-time position.
Well, on this paperwork, it shows that there's the 2 part-time positions. It doesn't have the position for the coordinator. I don't see it in here.
The coordinator's currently in there. That's been in there for several years.
Where is it at on this paper?
It's in the middle of the Parks and Rec department. If you look for Melissa Cooper, last name Cooper. Go up.
Okay. And with this, are we going to, I'm hearing different things from different staff. Are we going to the 5-day work week now, or is it optional in this new budget?
So this could happen at any time. What I've discussed with our city administrators was providing everyone with ample notice. I know several people have children, and much like myself, whenever my kids were younger in childcare, we had to sign a contract. So I wanted to give everyone ample notice. I talked to Bruce and Kyle about going to a 5-day work week on the basis that it would start at the beginning of the fiscal year, which to work with pay dates, it would actually be the week after, just for the way that time cards end. That way you're not going 2 different routes. But for departments that aren't public-facing, that aren't dealing with the public on a regular basis, if they have enough staff to stagger their staffs and get work done, working 4 10s, but they're open 5 days a week, I'm fine with that. You have some departments that are asking to stay at 4 10s. You have other departments asking to go to 5 8s. So there's plenty of room to be able to work with this.
From the concerns from the staff that have approached me, their concerns is as far as what they can see right now, it's looking like upper management will get to do the 4 10s, and the lower.
That's not the case.
Lower. I told them we would address it. The lower positions would, spread out the 8-hour day. So how would we govern that?
So there is currently in the process of putting together which departments are flexible enough to be able to do that, because you have to have staffing. A good example is water billing is one group that prefers the 8s, 5 days a week. So, and that's a very frontward-facing, public-facing group. You may have other groups like Garland's group that doesn't interact with the public as much unless they're blocking a road, but sorry, it happens. But if if his department has the staffing to where they can stagger that, and that's where he thinks that he can get that, he can still get his jobs done throughout, his city administrator or assistant city administrator agrees with that, then they can do that, and they can stagger that to where they're open 5 days a week, but staggered staff, so they're covering 10 hours.
So the bottom line is, though, the city will be open 5 days a week
Yes,
regardless. So
it's gonna be
think
staggered for which department.
I'd like to offer another option, what's called a 9-5-8. You got, this will also afford the employee who's gotten used to taking a day off to take care of personal matters, that will still give them a chance to take care of personal matters. They'll work for 8 days. They'll work 5 9-hour days for the first week, 4 9-hour days, and then, 3 9-hour days, and then an 8-hour, and then they can have 1 day off every other week. So in essence, they'll work for 72 hours of 9, they'll work for 8 days, 9-hour, 1 day, 8-hour, and every other week, they can work with their supervisor to have 1 day off to take care of their personal matters. And going back, just throwing back the 5-hour days won't traumatize them if they've made new contracts with their daycares, or if they've got other things, doctor's appointments. But that's one of the options that I'd like to introduce into it, along with the 10s and the 5s.
I'd like to see a list of the departments that, if City Hall is going to be functioning 5 days a week, what departments will be here 5 days a week? I think that's important to know.
Well,
What we don't want to get into is, as we continue to see who's working and who's not working, we want to make sure that if we're putting it in the budget and we're putting it in, people's paychecks, that the time that they're working, the time they're getting paid, the time that they're working. I think if we open up the door to, this department can work 4 days a week, this department can work 5 days a week, and this department here can, even with Alderman Jones's idea, that's more like the federal government across the board has similar to that schedule. But if it's consistent, it would be, whatever schedule we go to, I think it would make more sense to have it, this is the work week.
I thought the option was just to make sure that we got 5 days, that it's open 5 days a week. What I'm trying to do is offer something to the employees who, and just to be totally honest with you, you know, when I switched over to working administrative hours, there's nothing you can do for yourself. I mean, you're serving the people of the city, but you can't do anything for yourself until, you know, after hours. So, I mean, we got stores that are staying open longer now, but there are times when you have to set doctor's appointments and you're gonna have a sick child, and those times happen. This will afford you the opportunity to be a little bit more flexible, as opposed to saying, well, I've got to take off. And then you have no one covering at that time.
I submit that we have an administrator and directors of each department that are fully capable of handling the staffing needs of the city. I don't see any reason why the governing board needs to oversee that process.
Well, I don't think we're overseeing it, but with the mishaps of our flex time, you know, it shows that we had some terrible decision-making.
I didn't see that report had been released yet. Do you have a
No, I
copy?
brought it to the board's attention. That's why you have the report. That's why it's
We
being investigated.
don't have a report.
We
Well,
have,
that's why we're going through, that's why the board is spending money to have that looked into.
But there's not a determination on it.
No, there hasn't been a determination on it.
So to
think
say
whatever-
it's been bad or good
Oh, it's been
is-
bad. I mean,
Well,
we
that's
had no
just
tracking, we
your-
had no
It's
anything.
just your opinion, though, at this point.
Oh, no, the
That's
facts
not
show
an-
that.
No, the facts don't show that.
The facts do
But
show.
that's a whole different discussion outside of the budget, which is currently being investigated. Until we actually have the facts, it's better not to discuss that until then, because everything at that point is opinion.
Okay.
So so who decides that? You
So-
and Bruce, you and Phyllis?
Usually, the way that this is being handled right now is I've presented as far as my thoughts to Bruce and Kyle whenever we sat down. I've talked to just about everybody in the city at some point, and we've gone through, I've given them my thoughts on this as far as I'd like to see us open 5 days a week, that there's flexible time whenever it comes to departments, if they've got the staffing to be open 5 days a week and keep that same schedule where you have some working 4 days, you know, Monday through Thursday, others are working Tuesday through Friday, however they need to stagger it. Whereas you have other departments, such as Parks and Rec and Maintenance, where they may be working, you know, 7 days, depending on what's going on in the city.
Can we do that
But-
without adding personnel
To what?
to each department?
Well, for specific departments, there are some, yes. But again, this is where the city administrators are getting with each of those directors. And because we hire those directors for their ability to lead, to go through and see what we can do and what we can't do, and then go from there. Because this is a balance of not just the employees, but also the residents. It's a balance between everybody, because we have our employees. We don't want to browbeat our employees through things. At the same time, we want accessibility for our citizens. So this is balance, and this allows for that. Yes, City Hall will be open 5 days. Yes, you have some departments who work 4 days, some departments that work 5 days, some that work 7 days. It depends on the individual scenario.
I think that when you get that worked up, or you all get that worked up, I think from the way it sounds, you're going at it the right way. You're just gonna have to come up with an idea, because I think it works. I think working with the employees, but let's be realistic, more importantly, the citizens. But if we can find that common ground between the both of them and work it all out in 5 days, I think that's a good deal. I think it needs to be on a trial basis, though, to make sure that it's gonna work, you know, for a month or whatever, and then,
Well, the way our current, I believe, either municipal code or personnel policy
Personnel.
currently allows the city administrators to set schedules as needed for work volumes. So that's already in there. So if something's not working, they have that ability to change that. And of course, we're communicate on that.
good.
Yes, the handbook actually gives me the authority to set not only business hours, but work schedules as well. And so, you know, we are looking at different departments and staffing levels to see what we can do. Now, I will say this, you know, currently, you know, we're open Monday through Thursday as far as City Hall and you know, the stormwater building folks. You know, we're open from 7 a.m. to 5:30, Monday through Thursday. If we go back to 5 days, it'll have to be back to the 8 to 4:30 hours instead of 7 to 5:30, because staff-wise, there's no way we can keep the buildings open 10 hours a day,
Right.
5 days a week,
Right.
because we don't have enough staff. Now, going back to the 8 to 4:30, 5 days a week, you know, there may be some opportunity for some departments, some positions to have different shifts during that same day and still provide the coverage. The bottom line is that, and what everybody's got to remember, it's the same number of work hours per week. Everybody's working 40 hours, whether you're working 4 10s or 5 8s. So it's the same number of hours, it's just how it's going to be scheduled to make sure you have enough coverage to serve the public.
Right. Now, Alderman Jones, I'd like to hear more about what your proposal. Could you email some details of that to Bruce and Kyle that they can share with me, and we can learn more about that? Because of all the schedules that I've heard, even through my own career, I haven't heard of that before. So be open to at least hearing that. Thank you. Any more about the budget? Alderman Church, I think you wanted to mention parks. Was it just about the integration, or is there?
Yeah, just the
Okay.
integration of that. And, I mean, do we keep, so when we adopt this budget or we approve this budget, what is on this paper is what we're saying we are in agreement to, right?
Yes.
So when it's telling us these individuals are in these positions, are they in those positions?
Well, whenever, if you want to talk about, like, specifically to where we were talking about parks and maintenance, that will shift because, like I'd mentioned before, eliminating the director of Parks and Rec position, eliminating the manager of maintenance position, creating a new position, and then all applicants can apply for that.
So does that add another dollar amount to the budget? I mean,
What
if we
that-
eliminate one position,
You eliminate 2 positions, and you're creating 1 position. So you basically take those collective dollars, all of those dollars are not going to go to that new position.
Right.
So there'd be a rate study based on our outside firm that looks at, based on the job and
There'd be
as
a
far
new
as it
job
gives it a grade.
description and everything, and our consultant would look at what the compensation would be for that position based on that job description. And then as far as filling that position, you know, if it's approved in the budget, there will be a hiring process that we would go through to fill that position. You don't just name somebody to be put in that position.
okay. And on like the city hall with the assistant city administrator, or, no, I'm sorry, the assistant city recorder and the city recorder, are those positions are going to stay current like they are now?
Yes, because they're currently in the budget.
Do we plan, will that be something that are we planning on filling that position? Or is that position
Filling
still
what-
open?
What position?
The assistant city recorder.
That position is not currently open.
And who is the assistant city recorder?
April Lawrence?
Does she come back to work?
I don't know of a time frame. Any other questions?
I just have a potential solution for us to be able to agree upon the budget. There's only been a few items that we have discussed tonight that's been, the majority of the budget, I think that we all agree on, and I think that our goal here is to pass a budget. So one suggestion is that we could pass the uncontested portion of the budget and do the rest by a referendum or a vote on each item, line item as a line item.
Now, I know with the allocations, whenever it comes to non-for-profit, that can be amended usually on second reading, because with second reading, you have the non-profit portion as well. Isn't that right, Bruce?
When we bring the budget back for second reading, we will also have a resolution on that agenda that actually appropriates the funding for the nonprofits. So, I mean, there's still some time between first and second reading to make adjustments to the nonprofits. You know, however, if no agreement can be reached on the nonprofits, you know, you can pass another resolution at any time during the year to appropriate additional funds to any nonprofits you would like, but it would involve a budget amendment.
Correct.
And what about the senior citizen position?
That would be part of the regular budget that we would vote on.
So if we're not, we don't have any room for negotiations to get that position? I mean, I think it's worth.
Basically what I think you would have to do there is leave it the way it is currently, you know, and we can adjust the budget to do that. And then whenever an agreement can be reached out between the board to decide what to do with that position, it could go back through the budget amendment process to reclassify that part-time as a full-time, if that's what the decision of the board is to do.
But if we want to stand strong on, you know, not being voting for a budget until we can get that position and, you know, other things, that's our right.
Well,
It's up to the board, yeah.
Ultimately, if the budget doesn't pass, if we don't have a budget passed by July 1st, last year's budget will be implemented at all the same levels.
It starts over, right.
And then we'll have to go through a series of budget amendments to address any changes, such as like the restructuring with the fire department or other positions that had been added after that budget had passed.
Well,
So can you, as mayor, can you add that position?
What, the full-time, that was in the proposed budget. That's in there if you look at
Yeah,
the,
I seen it.
so that, I mean, that was in there. We had quite a bit of conversation on that.
I believe the budget, as it's amended throughout the year, is what actually starts over. We'd have to check on that with MTS. So any budget amendments that we have made throughout this year would be in effect starting July 1st. And that would stay in effect until a new budget is adopted for the 1920 year. That's my understanding. We need to double check on that,
Okay.
if it includes amendments or not. They were approved through 1819.
And then last year's nonprofits would still be funded at those levels, even the ones that didn't request.
They would be
funding.
funded, but you'd still have to pass a resolution to actually appropriate the funds to where we could actually write checks to the individual nonprofits.
Well, again, I will ask the board, just like I asked last time, is if there are changes that you're wanting in this budget, please email those over to Bruce and Kyle and Phyllis. And before next week, we will sit down and review those and go from there with putting together the budget.
Will consideration be given to those submittals?
Yes, I actually read through your whole submittal. So, I mean, Phyllis sent it over to me. I read through each one of these.
And if the mayor makes any changes, I will forward those changes to all the board members.
But I say, please participate. Please send over your thoughts.
In this budget, I don't see, I guess the capital expenditures aren't in the budget.
They're I believe they were the last page. If you go back and look at them, it starts off. Sheet
Yeah,
looks like
I
this.
seen it in here, but I'm saying if it's not on this page, it's not.
Correct. Correct. And it's just working through what money we have. And then if anyone needs any, has any questions with the Hope Station, I believe their contact information, if you want to reach out to them, was in the email that Phyllis sent out earlier today. They were requesting $20,000.
Hey, Phyllis, when you have like the bonds, is that something that's just ongoing every year that we pay towards?
Until they were paid in full.
Okay.
Or till we refund them, which is basically refinance them at a lower rate. But yeah, they'll stay that way. I think during the retreat, I forecasted a schedule out of when some of them would drop off. I think we're still 2 or 3 years out before any big ones drop off.
I seen a thing the other day on refinancing bonds, so I didn't know if that's something we do.
Oh, we do that, yeah, regularly.
So you get like a notice and you say, now's the time to do that?
Yeah, we have a consultants, Stevens Group, that kind of oversees our bonds. When
Okay.
they see the rates go down, they say, hey, y'all got an
Okay,
opportunity.
yeah, it's similar in the private.
Like-
So it's the same with the private sector, okay.
Probably 3 or 4 years ago that the last one was refinanced.
We did one a couple of years ago. It's not been that long.
Thought it was longer.
I think maybe 16, 17,
Okay,
or early 17,
was.
18.
okay. Okay. Anything else, anybody? Okay, call this meeting adjourned.
I've been sitting here listening and thinking, and I've been thinking about this for 3 weeks. Set that down, it's gonna take a minute. I want to apologize to the people at home that might be watching. I want to apologize to this board and to the employees. I think the reason that we're sitting here tonight is because of me. At the Bowman meeting, when Vice Mayor Brown made a recommendation to deny the budget, between what was up on the board and what was on this paper, I was looking at the 1819 amendment. And if I remember correctly, Alderman Jones seconded. We took a vote, and I voted yes for denying it. When what I should have done was I should have voted no. But luckily, I feel like maybe tonight's meeting come out a little bit, especially with this hope thing. But I can tell you that I feel very confident that the reason we're sitting here tonight is because I was not paying attention. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Alderman No. Call this meeting adjourned.